Okay, so here we are at my place at the flat, looking at the balcony garden. Let's go and have a bit of a look, see how I've set that up. Um, so our balcony faces out to the east, and we have quite a large tree, a silky oak tree, to the northeast of our place, which means we get morning shadow through here, particularly in winter when the sun is rising up through the sort of the northeast. So we have to deal with a lot of shade here in winter. In summer, it's not so bad because the sun is rising towards the east southeast. So we get a bit more sun coming through here. So there's a few different things that we've done on the balcony garden that I just wanted to show you. So first, how I've sort of set up the design of the containers. You can see on every corner there's a very large pot or container. So this one here and that one there. These two are actually wicking containers. And I talk more about that in the workshop. There's also another large pot in the middle of the balcony, and another wicking container in there. So what I try to do is sort of set up the structure of the design of the containers to have these large pots in the corners and in the middle, and then I build smaller pots around those larger pots. And in this case, for this one here, where the curry leaf tree is growing, I've got some little kokedama balls growing in there. They're just ornamental, really. They're just a nice little feature. I've got some West Indian arrowroot growing in there and some maiden hair ferns. They're just nice, lovely little things. But also we can cut the foliage and use that foliage as mulch. There and then I've got more sort of pots set up here, some West Indian arrowroot, another fern, a rain lily, again just a lovely ornamental. And really on this end of the balcony, because it does get a lot of shade, we have mainly ornamental plants, or more ornamental plants than what we have down the more productive, sunnier end of the balcony. I've also got this trellis to provide us with a little bit of privacy from the neighbours. So what we've got growing up here is a native plant called scrambling lily, sometimes called native asparagus. You can eat the tips and it tastes a bit like asparagus. And I've also been experimenting with sweet potato. So sweet potato is usually a ground cover. In this case, I've got golden sweet potato. I planted it into the wicking pot just here. Just a tuber went into the pot, and it's acting as a really cool climber, providing that privacy. And the other thing about sweet potato is you can actually eat the leaf tips, put them in a stir fry. So from about that length onwards, I can actually cut all that up and eat it. So that's what's going on in that corner. Yeah, I mentioned the curry leaf tree. Curry leaf, a larger shrub, actually grows into a tree. It's in a larger pot. Very tough plant. It's used in South Indian curries and cuisine. And I usually cut it right back every year, and it comes back, and I root prune it. I pull the whole root ball out every few years, and I cut the roots, and then I put the plant back in the pot with some new soil and compost, and away it goes again. So it's a really reliable plant, and we use it occasionally in some curries that we cook. If we come down here, have a look. I'll just pull that away. Underneath these pots, this is where I keep my tools and equipment for the balcony garden. And what I've got in here is a few things. I've got some gardening gloves. I've got a little gardening trowel, dustpan and broom. Really essential thing to have in a balcony garden, because anytime you do some gardening, you can't really avoid spilling soil onto the floor. So it's good having a dustpan and broom. I've got some white oil in here that I use to spray for aphids and mealybugs that occasionally get into the garden. I've got some rags in here. I've got a scourer in case I make a real mess on the tiles and I need to clean up the floor. I've got a little bit of inorganic fertiliser, which I'm sort of not using so much these days, mainly using composts these days that I make. And there's a little bit of white oil formula in there, and other rags and bits and pieces. So that's sort of what goes into my little kit here, my little gardening kit. Put all that back, and I've got it stored in a black plastic pot with the tray for the black plastic pot as the lid. And it just goes in there. Oh. Yeah, so that's that. The other thing I've got here is I've got a little bucket of compost. So we make compost down in the common area of the block of flats with other people, and I've just brought a bucket of compost up because I'm renewing the garden, the change of seasons, going into the cooler time of the year, and I'm doing a bit of a changeover. So I brought up some compost, topping up the garden and the soil and renewing the soil a bit. So that's what's going on there. In this pot, I've got some Warrigal greens, a native spinach, sometimes called New Zealand spinach, growing in here. And one of the interesting things about balcony gardening is you might not see a lot of productivity on the inside of the balcony, but on the outside facing towards the light. If I just come around here, you can see a lot of greens growing on those Warrigal greens, New Zealand spinach growing there, and further away the sweet potato and the scrambling lily going towards the light. So sometimes when we harvest from a balcony garden, we actually have to lean over the railing to get what we need. So that's something to think about. The other thing to think about is the shape of the pots that we're using, just to fit them into the space. So I've got these long pots in here that I've collected over the years. A lot of these pots I've never actually purchased. I've actually found them on the street. People have been throwing out their pots, or other people who live in the block of flats, when they leave these pots around. So I've been collecting these. The long pots are great for fitting into the space without taking up too much room. And then we've got sort of the hanging planter type ones. These ones are pretty shallow in their depth. And so they have to be changed. The soil in them has to be changed quite regularly, like at least every 12 months to grow something like Italian parsley, which has, relatively deep roots. So we don't have a lot of soil depth there for that plant. So we have to change the soil more often. Underneath we've got some native violets, which are doing really well. And again, a really shallow planter with a tray underneath it. This sort of plant's probably more suited to a shallow planter because it's a smaller plant and doesn't have as deep a root as the Italian parsley. The other type of pots we've got in here are terracotta pots, fired clay terracotta. They're getting harder to get, and I've been collecting them over the years. There's advantages and disadvantages with them. And then the other type, this looks like terracotta, but it's actually cement. It's actually a cement pot. So that's another type of pot, which looks okay. I don't mind them. They're okay. So got a few different plants coming into our cool season garden. I've got some rocket growing here. I've got some mushroom plant or runchia, which is more of a summer season, wet season spinach that I'll continue to try and grow into the cooler months. We'll see how that goes. There's some plantain spinach growing here, Thai basil, more runchia. I've just put in some cos lettuce. I've got some Mexican coriander. Goes really well in a balcony garden. It tastes like coriander, but it's not related to coriander at all. Got a leftover tomato from the summer season, cherry tomato. I'm just going to see how that goes into the cooler months. We probably won't get any tomatoes off it because we need at least 5 to 6 hours of direct sun on the tomatoes. And with this aspect in the east with that tree, in the middle of winter we probably only get 3 hours of direct sunshine. So I'm hoping this tomato will survive over the winter, and then into spring when there's more sunshine we'll start getting some productivity out of that. Below them I've got some more cos lettuce. I've got a little bit of celery in this one and some cos lettuce, and then I've got a large perennial basil growing up here. And then behind that there's some trailing rosemary growing in a pot, in a planter pot. Then the other thing to mention is, I've got a little watering can in here. Watering can's a very handy thing to have on a balcony garden. And I've got some stakes growing in, stored here. Occasionally I'll need stakes to stake up larger plants like the tomatoes or the basil, that sort of thing. So there you have it. That's what I'm currently doing in the balcony garden. I've got enough space here so me and my partner can sit out in the afternoon and just enjoy the garden. So that's a really important thing to do as well with balcony gardening, is just to create or leave enough space for you to come out into it and enjoy it.